Welcome to Sam's Book Club. We are starting today with Atomic Habits. It will absolutely revolutionize everything about your life. And it's not going to happen overnight. And that's the point of the book. If you are going to quit in the next 30 seconds, then listen to this very quick summary of the book. If you change yourself 1% and you get better and better every day, it will compound to a point that you will become the kind of person that you really want to become. That was it. Now let's explore what that means. We often try to get change by changing everything about our lives. I'm going to do this huge thing that I want to do. And then when you fail, you think to yourself, I just lack the motivation. Because the world believes that being motivated is the most important thing there is. That is not true. No amount of motivation will get you there, because motivation, willpower, is a limited resource. You may not think it is, but I'm telling you, it is. It is a limited resource. Some of us have a lot of it, others have less of it, but all of us have a limited amount. So when you wake up in the morning, you have a limited resource of willpower, and you need to be very careful what you do. We see this in children very immediately. If you have children and you give them lots of high dopamine, very motivating stuff in the morning, such as video games and YouTube videos, and the worst of all, TikTok, if they spend some time on TikTok in the morning, you can forget all productivity throughout the day, because all the willpower has been sucked by TikTok. And that was it. And that also goes to adults. So if you're going to indulge in some high dopamine activity, even for yourself, make it in the evening, and definitely for your children. If you have the wrong system, no amount of willpower and motivation will get you to succeed. And that's the main aspect that I would like us to consider for this first part, is setting up your system in a way that you can improve. Now, I'm coming to Alyssa in a moment about this, but we're going to talk about the idea of constant improvement, slow and constant improvement. And last week we talked about the French, the English team for cycling and how much better they got. They went from being one of the worst teams in the world, even to the point that their main sponsor said, don't use any of our products because it's embarrassing when we see our brand on your bikes and on your clothing. You're not allowed to wear any of our stuff because you're a disgrace to cycling. Not quite, but it was pretty close. And then they changed the leader, and the leader said, instead of trying to get the big prizes, what we're going to do is we're going to get better at everything. Minor improvements on everything, including what kind of pillow the athletes would sleep on, including what the color of the truck that transported the bikes inside. What was the color inside? So small improvements in multiple areas compound. Small improvements compound. Now, we don't understand compound interest. We don't. As humans, we don't seem to be made to understand compound interest. We understand linear interest, which is basically I read a book today and I get a little bit better. And then I read a book next week and I get a little bit better. And I read a book the following week and I get a little bit better. And it's the same, absolutely the same curve as you improve. That's what our brain tells us. That's what our brain thinks, a linear progression. But it isn't linear. All improvements, they compound one on top of the other. So let's do this. Let me find here a file that I'm going to share with you. So let's do this here. I hope you can see my screen. We are going to put here number of books that you read. And I'm just going to take one element of improvement, which is the number of books that you read. We could take any other, but we're going to take this, and then we're going to put percentage over here, we're going to take a variable. No, we're going to put it here, improvement. And we're going to say that if you read one book, you improve 3%. You improve yourself 3%. Now, this isn't exactly true. It's a lot more than 3%. When you read and incorporate a book into your life, the improvement is much more than 3%. But let's say you are really lazy and you just read it and you incorporate just a little bit. And so it's a minor improvement of 3% with every book that you read. And then here is you. Okay, so that's you. You, after reading one book, you are 1.03%. You start with being yourself with 0 books. Let's add another row above, which is 0 books. And at 0 books, you are 1. So that's you at 0 books. You are yourself. That's who you are today at 0 books. That's you. Now, let's say that 1%. So here, this calculation we're going to do is this times 1.03, which is 3% improvement. Okay, so that's 3% improvement over here. Now, let's see what happens when you 2, 3, etc. So let's see what happens after 20 books. What you can expect is not that you will improve slowly or in the same rate. You will improve slowly at first, but it will not be in the same rate. So let's bring this down here and look what happens. After 20 books, at 3% increase, you will find yourself at 1.8 what you started, which is almost twice as good as when you started. Okay, so after 20 books, let's say you read one book a week. Let's go to 26 because that's half a year. Let's see what happens after 26 books. Here, let's see if that will work. Okay, 26 books, you are twice as good as when you started. Okay, so you look at yourself now and you think, how can I improve my game in whatever area you decide to improve on? And you think, okay, I'm going to start with one book a week. And you read one book and you have some brilliant ideas, but you don't see any real results in the real world. It's too small. And then you are the same as your colleagues that started in the same way. And so you don't improve that much. Then you read the second week and the third week and the fourth week. How many people did we start on the first week of this book club? Do you remember how many people were here live at the same? 170 people came on the first one. How many do we have now that this is the 4th or 5th book? I can't remember. 41. What does that tell you? That people, when they don't see immediate results, what do? They quit. And that's human nature. We do that because we don't get the idea of compound interest. Now, Alyssa, if I were to tell you that you can be twice as efficient and twice as good in 6 months, and you can be ahead of yourself, let's just compare yourself with yourself. You can double your output within a given field in 6 months. You would immediately think that may not be possible, but as it turns out, small improvements lead to that. Have you found that in your life?
Absolutely. I think that oftentimes we limit ourselves because it's exactly what you said. I'm not seeing these big things. And I'm one of those kind of people who will often take on these huge, enormous things and try to do all these changes at once, and then they never stick. And then I get frustrated and I feel like I can never change. Well, it's actually because I actually set myself up for failure. That's really, in a way, what I was doing. I wasn't creating these habits that were easy and duplicatable and like getting ourselves in a rhythm. One of the times I saw this the most was I hate to exercise. I'm just going to be honest. I hate to exercise. If there's one thing I hate to do, is like running, walking, any of that. And I signed up. I don't know what possessed me for a half marathon.
What?
I, I signed up for a half marathon. I had never, ever, I didn't even walk regularly. Right. But what I did was I started creating small habits. When I got out of bed, I had my sneakers right there. So the first thing I did was I was going to get out of bed anyways. So the first thing I did was I created this habit that the first thing my feet hit were my shoes. It kind of made it a little bit easier. It started getting my brain going. And I'm going to tell you, I still remember.
And for the rest of the world, sneakers is trainers. Okay.
Trainers. Sorry. I put on my trainers.
What is that? It's trainers.
Very special footwear.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I remember being on a treadmill with my children watching me, and I was crying, and I'm like, I'm doing this for you. I want to show you that you can do anything. I didn't realize I was doing it for me. I was proving to myself I could do anything. And I was bad. You guys, I was bad. My husband decided he was going to join me on this half marathon, and he started a month after me, and he was already way faster than me. And he hadn't been running or walking either. And I was like, I'm bad. And so I started to get discouraged, but I said, no, I'm just going to keep doing one day at a time. And slowly I went from 14-minute mile to 13-minute, under 14. I was like, woo, kind of a thing. I never got fast, but I got better and I improved. And in the end, even though I had never gone more than 10 miles, on May 2nd of that year, I did the full 13.1 miles. Was I fast? No. But did I do it? Yes. Was I better than when I started? Absolutely. And I think that's what we sometimes forget. It's those those incremental things that we need to do. It's creating those small habits that make us start the cycle. There are cues to create that start habit in my mind. So I start, okay, I put on my shoes. I'm going to admit, never run a half marathon again. Do I have any desire? No, not at all. Have I watched my husband run half marathons? Yes. He's done 5 or 6 of them. I will never join him. I'm okay with that because I actually got what I needed out of that. And that was that I taught myself that I can do what I set my mind to. And it just takes small incremental steps of just being consistent and doing it.
Look at what Eric says here in the chat. He says, hold on. He says, living in Michigan the last few years, I calculated that putting coats in the entrance closet took at least 20 to 60 seconds a day. So I decided to get a coat rack that saves me 90% of that. As a result, each year I spend 5 hours fewer hanging up coats. So worth it, in my view. Now, you see, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly right. If you improve one of these little things per day in your day, right? Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe, and within your sleep, there are multiple ways of getting better. So one of the books that I'm reading now is How to Improve Sleep. And there are 100 things you can do during the day to improve your sleep. You need sunlight in the morning. So that's your 1%. You're going to, when the sun is out, when you notice the sun is out, you're going to spend 10 minutes outside, even in Maryland, no matter how hot it is. So that creates a 1% improvement. And that 1% improvement for that day, the next day you start something else. The next day you get slightly better and slightly better and slightly better. If you, and that's something that is really striking in the book. If you get 1% better every day throughout 1 year, you are 37 times better when you finish that year. So when you look at your field, when you look at other people and how much more they can achieve than you, don't be disheartened. It's just a matter of setting up a system where you can constantly improve so that you can get better. Remember our book chart? Let's go back to that because it's really, really scary. So we're here at 6 months and you're already twice as efficient as you were at the beginning of that. Okay, and that's a big deal. Twice efficiency. You are 2 times better. So for your, let's say you are doing this in a field of ministry, you are 2 times better as a pastor if that's what you're doing in 6 months. If you're a digital marketer, you're achieving 2 times the results in 6 months. It doesn't matter what field you are. In 6 months, 1 book a week in that field by only 3% improvement per book, you could do much better than 3% improvement per book. But let's say that's it. You are, you know, just within this time frame. Now we are going to take a year. Okay. And in 1 year, let's follow the books over here. 52 is here. So in 1 year, you are 4.5 times better than when you started. In 1 year. And you think about your career and you think, I never had the chance. I don't know enough people. I'm not good enough. I don't have a degree. I don't have this. I don't have that. 1 book a week, people. That's it. And in 1 year, you are almost 5 times better than when you started. These algorithms, these complex curves, you know, compounded curves, they are insane. Now let's take here, let's carry on let's go to 2 years now. Okay, which is 104 weeks. Let's go to 2 years. Let's see when we get to 2 years. Two years. You are 21 times better. At 100 books, you are at least 20 times better than when you started. There is no competition. 1 book a week. But let's create a graph out of this so that we can have let's take this improvement rate here in the middle. It's unnecessary. So we'll delete this column and we'll just try and create a graph out of this. Let's see how easy that is to do on this Mac. And that's your curve. It's pretty easy. So that's your curve. You see, you start and you don't notice any improvement. And it seems to be the same as before. And then somewhere here, I would say somewhere here, somewhere when you get to 65 books, there is an explosion. And that explosion is tangible in the things that you do. That explosion is very real in the job that you do. So I want to show you a graph that demonstrates this in a very weird way. I want to see if I can pull that up here. So I can show you how that happened with me in just one field, just one area. Let me see if I can do that. Let's see. And we go back until we can. Oh. No, it won't let me go back that long. Let me see. Sorry, guys, we'll get there. We're going to try and see if we can show you this because I think it's pretty cool.
Hey, Sam, while you're working on this, I know that you love multitasking, but a question came in and I think it's a great question. Annette asked, we are talking about books, but does this translate to watching talks, training videos, etc. online?
I didn't hear you.
As I said, you love multitasking.
One thing at a time, I'm afraid. It's I can try. It just never works.
It's okay. So Annette,
we'll go for it.
All right. So I'm going to go with absolutely. What this is talking about, it's self-improvement. So if I am watching, for instance, I'm actually trying to improve myself in the area of digital marketing. Okay. As I am doing this, I'm not just listening to books, I'm actually taking online trainings. So I have actually already completed 2 online trainings. I am looking into actually going through Cornell University to get this like training that they have. My thing right now, I am actually just eating up, absorbing everything I can. So it's not just books, it's everything I can. So I absolutely think that this whole curve it's not just in books. Books are fabulous, but it's saying anything that you can do that is creating benefit and adding value to what you're doing in your life. So for me, that can be training videos, watching talks, coming to these book clubs. Okay, you're not reading a book right now, potentially. I'm hoping you're all reading the books. But if you are not reading the book, you are still being benefited because you're learning these principles. You don't have to read the book to get the benefit in this situation.
Yeah, the book is irrelevant. You see, don't be attached to reading the book. It's taking the knowledge that you get from the book and applying it in your life. Ideas are worth nothing. It's when you apply those ideas that the magic happens. So, that's a really important thing to remember. I can't find the graphs properly because Facebook had many data issues. But let me share with you some of the numbers. When I arrived at the General Conference, I'm responsible for social media for the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. And we had about 460,000 followers on our Facebook page. And one of the things that's really important is to grow that to as many people as possible so the church can have a voice and can reach people. And we tried all sorts of things for these few years. And I realized that I was absolutely out of my depth. So we decided, okay, I need to read about this. So I decided to read about branding and digital marketing and leadership. Those are the three subjects. This book club is a result of that exploration. And I attempted to read 2 books a week since 2017 or 2016. And at first, that did not have such an effect. And we increased, yes. And we went from when I arrived until December last year, we went from 465 to just over 500,000 followers. And then something happened. What happened? We got to that point in the curve where the knowledge made a difference in the real world. And so what does that mean? It means this is just one of the tangible results that we have. We now have 715,000 followers from December last year till now, from 500,000. So we achieved 50% more followers in the last 6 months than in the previous 8-9 years that the page existed. Why? Because knowledge compounds. When you begin to understand one thing and then another thing and then another thing, the strategies get better and everything improves. So this is an important aspect for your life, is for you to have the ability to improve 1% per day. Now, in order to improve, you need to have, there are a few things that absolutely matter. Each of those 1% improvements of these behaviors, it needs to be obvious, it needs to be easy, it needs to be attractive, and it needs to be satisfying. So if you simply leave it in the cloud, I'm going to do a course on digital marketing, or I'm going to do this thing. And it's not clear when it will happen, how it will happen, etc. Then it won't happen. And you will not be able to do it. So it needs to be obvious. It needs to be easy. If it requires 25 steps for you to do it, you're not going to do it. So design a system where it's obvious and it's easy. It has to be easy. Then it has to be attractive. If it's not attractive, you won't do it. So design a system where the thing that you want to do is attractive. I'll give you an example of that last week. I was recording at Hope Channel the sermon for this week's Hope at Home. And I had an interview with Peter Landless. And after the interview, we were talking and so on. And I mentioned how hard it is for me to keep healthy and to exercise. There are so many things to do. I just don't want to do that. I would if I could, but I just don't want to, sort of thing. And he said, and he gave me some tips and so on. And I said, you know what? I need to do something about this. So I prepared myself. I got some sneakers or trainers for walking. And I went walking, and I noticed that, and I went obviously walking on the streets and so on. And I decided to make it attractive. I would listen to some content for my PhD. And my AirPods before, the traffic was so loud, and these professors, they don't know how to talk. So they talk within themselves and you can hardly hear them. And I couldn't hear them, and it was frustrating. So I went and I finally bought the noise canceling AirPods. And today I went for the walk and I could hear everything beautifully. And before I realized, 57 minutes later, I walked 3 miles. So this is an example of this. It has to be easy. It has to be attractive. And finally, it has to be satisfying. You know, what are you going to gain out of it? Oh, but you shouldn't need to gain anything out of it. Forget what you should or shouldn't. Is it going to work or not? Are you going to be able to do this constantly or not? And if it meets those 4 things, if it's obvious, easy, attractive, or satisfying, then it will really help you. Now, Alyssa, stacking and starting. So we talked about habit stacking. He talks about in the book, you know, you do one thing in order to lead to the other thing. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I love habit stacking. It's actually something I've applied a lot in my life. My most recent habit stacking, well, I'll tell you what it is in a second, but basically what it is habit stacking. There's already a habit you have in your life. Okay. So my habit before was I woke up. Okay. That's always good, right? We woke up. But what I did was I stacked the habit that my feet hit my shoes and I went for a walk. Okay. So like what I did was I something that you're already going to do. Okay. Waking up's maybe a little bit generic, but then like you do something immediately after that. So for some people, maybe you need to take pills before you go to bed at night. So what you do is you put the pill bottle right next to your toothbrush, because that way after you're done brushing your teeth, you take your pill. You don't have to like, oh, wait, it's down in the kitchen. Oh, I'm too lazy to go get it. You don't want to make it hard. That's what Sam was saying. It has to be easy. So one of the habits I stacked recently was after I get done eating, because I like eating, it's very fun. I make all sorts of stuff from yummy scratch. I now go for a walk. But even to do that, so that's my new habit I stacked. But one of the ways I did this, okay, I know it's crazy, I put shoes by my bed again. Because one of my ways I'm like, oh, I don't have shoes on. And now I got to go and get shoes. So I've actually started stacking multiple habits that make other habits easier in the day. And there's actually a philosophy I heard. It was by this woman. She had this whole thing from it called Fly Lady. And she said, you need to dress to the shoes every day. You'll be more productive if you're wearing shoes. If you're barefoot, you will be less productive than if you're wearing shoes. So I've been starting to dress to the shoes every day. So I put on my trainers. Caught that one. I put on my trainers at the beginning of the day. That way, when I'm done eating, I have no excuses anymore because I'm already ready to go. I'm already on the floor. The front door is right next to where I am. And so I can just walk out the door. And it's actually really good to walk after you eat anyways. So my reward is not as much fun yet, but I'm waiting to see that incremental change because I want to see my weight go down. So right now my reward is this dress that's sitting in the closet that I have in a very visible place that I plan to get into, but I know it's going to take time. So I have all these little incremental changes and it's going to be the whole compound thing. It's going to be slow, but we'll get there kind of a thing together. But so habit stacking is basically taking something you already do. You eat. As soon as you're done eating, for some people, this is a hard one. You take your plates to the kitchen. You don't leave them on the table, okay? Or once I take my plates to the kitchen, maybe I'm good at that, but maybe I'm actually washing them immediately. So it's creating these next steps. These are things that you identify you want to do, and you figure out what can I attach it to so that I can get it done.
Fantastic. There is another book that talks about the power of starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I want to test that out at the moment. So on your desk or wherever you are around you, look at an object. And when I count to 5, you're going to pick up that object. Okay. No matter, it doesn't matter what it is. You're just going to pick it up and you're going to show it to the camera. Even if I'm not seeing you, it doesn't matter. You're going to show it. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, excellent. Now we're going to count backwards, okay? We're going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When I get to 1, you pick up that object again, okay? Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Okay. Now, again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I never said to pick up the object, but you did it. And the reason for that is this countdown is really moving. And there is some, I'm sure there is some biological reason for it, but children are the same. If you want children to do something, you're telling them, please do this, please do this, please do this, and they don't. Just count and just go to them. 3, 2, 1. You never said that you would discipline them when it gets to 1. You don't need to. It's implied that something will happen when it gets to 1. And that thing is they will do whatever it is that you're asking them to do. So this is a really powerful way to start. So you stack your habits, whatever they may be. Let's say we talked about exercise. We talked about eating habits. We talked about reading. We talked about any kind of improvement, but it could be your ministry or what it is that you're doing. So there are always things that you need to do in your ministry or your job that you don't like doing, but they're absolutely necessary. And if you create this stacking mechanism where you're going to do one thing, it's going to lead to the other thing, and then in order to start, you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and immediately you will get going. And once you get going, you do the first thing, you do the second thing, then your mind goes into other thinking, you're in automatic mode, and before you know it, you walk 3 miles. That's the kind of behavior that you want to apply. Writing is the same thing. I read this book last year, and I've been now this week trying to reapply it, and the results are tremendous. Because it's so simple to design a system that just works and you don't need the willpower. Use your willpower for other things, but the least usage of willpower, the better. And if you design a system that would work, then, it's good. Now, the opposite is also true. So the opposite is if you want to stop a bad habit, you do the exact opposite of what was here. Right? So you take away the clues, you make it less obvious, you make it hard to do it. So for example, if you're addicted to TikTok, and it's easy to get addicted to TikTok. I did an experiment. On Thursday and Friday, I spent 30 minutes in the morning on TikTok. It ruined my day. I couldn't get anything done properly. You have to be careful with TikTok. You have to be careful with anything that is highly addictive. Why? Because it sucks your willpower completely, and it's very difficult to do anything productive after that. And I was sad the whole day, and I didn't understand why. Amy's like, "What's going on?" And I don't know. And then yesterday I didn't, and suddenly my day was great. Even though it was Sunday, I got to do the things I wanted to get done, and everything got better. So be very careful about your bad habits. Make them very abstract. So in other words, I want to do this thing that I shouldn't do. Okay. Then you say, okay, I'm going to do it sometime, but not now. Maybe in the future I'll do it, but not now. When are you going to do it? I don't know, but not now. In other words, you are creating this idea of, I don't need the willpower to say no. It's stronger than me. I'm just saying no for right now. So you're taking away the obvious nature of it. You also need to take away the cues. So if you have a bad habit that starts when you look at a certain app on your phone, delete the thing. And I think Jesus had something to say about that, just remove. It's better for you to not have an eye than not to enter the kingdom. And if there is something that leads you, even if it's something good that leads you down to a bad habit, get rid of that thing so you have no cue to go down the bad road. It has to be bad habits. You need to make it as hard as possible. So if you have, for example, if you have an addiction online, it could be anything. It could be from too much social media to too much Netflix to pornography. It could be anything in social media. Just create as many steps as necessary before you get to do the thing you want to do. So, and you shouldn't do. So if you have, for example, an addiction with social media, ask somebody you trust to change your password every Monday and just allow you in once a week. So is it possible for you to get in? Yes. It's just a lot more hassle because you need to reset your password and then you go to your email and simply doing that, that makes it less likely for you to do it. So make it hard, make it unattractive for you to do it, and definitely try to make it as unsatisfying as possible. So we talked about stacking and starting. Next is syncing and scoring. And syncing we talked about a little bit, but I want to focus on scoring. When you score something visually, when you see something visually that it demonstrates that you are doing that thing which you want to do, what happens is it serves as proof that you are that kind of person. And that's really important. If you write every day something, it proves that you're a writer. If it is exercise that you're trying to do and you do that every day, it proves that you're the kind of person who doesn't break your routine. If you're a designer and you're struggling to design, then design every day. And as you see that demonstration in front of you, that little tick on a calendar, that shows you that you are the kind of person that you want to be. And this changes you because your identity is at the center. Your behavior spans from your identity. Are you the kind of person who does this sort of thing or not? And our public identity is often different from our private within identity, because all of our insecurities play out in our within identity. And that's, if, for example, let's say you want to get better at public speaking, right? You want to get better at public speaking. That's you. I need to get better at public speaking. Okay. Then what do you need to do? You need to read about it. You need to watch about it, but you need to do it. And if every day you decide that you're going to speak in public, be it on a YouTube video or in a real context, then create that context, even if it is with your family, and tell them, I have something to say. I need 5 minutes of your time. Gather the family and then say it. That counts. And if every day you're speaking in public, then you are a public speaker. And if you are a public speaker, then the insecurities start to go away. Because before you get up to a crowd, you have a little voice in your head that says, what are you doing? You're not a public speaker. And then you can look back and see everything that you've done. And you can look at that voice and say, no, I am. Look at the evidence. The evidence is louder than the negative voice that always plays in our head. So the evidence is hugely important because it's proof that you are the kind of person whom you believe you are. Your behavior stems from your identity, right? So if you have a bad habit, the same thing happens. It's not uncommon for people to go back to their addiction because they're like, well, this is what I do. And you go back to it. And then you're sad because it's another evidence that you are the kind of person who is addicted to that thing. And it gets worse and worse. Marilyn mentioned the Myers-Briggs personality test, and there are other good comments that are here. Your identity is hugely important. Are you the kind of person who? And then you fill that sentence. Okay. Let's... Alyssa, what else do you have from the book that you'd like to highlight? Anything else before we open up for questions?
One thing I really, really loved actually was a quote. And I think it's because, especially right now, there's a lot of talk about like losing our freedoms. We don't like to lose our freedoms. And I think a lot of people feel like if we create habits, like we don't get to have like the freedom to do what we want to do, kind of a thing. And he says habits do not restrict freedom, they create it. In fact, the people who don't have their habits handled are often the ones with the least amount of freedom. And I liked this when I was reading it. I listened to this book with my 3 children when we were, I think I mentioned that last week. And actually my middle daughter is actually listened to this on an audiobook for the last 2 days. So I actually implemented something Sam said where his son has to read a book. So I actually now, all 3 of my daughters are reading different books. So this is her book for the week. But I think this was something that struck me because I like freedom. I like to feel like I can accomplish things. But I actually realized without habits in place, I actually am more limited in life. I don't get to accomplish what I want in my job, in my personal life. spiritually, all of these things, if you don't have habits, they start getting lost in the mire and everything just kind of gets shuffled around and everything's kind of crazy. And I think it's important for us to realize that this doesn't restrict us. It actually empowers us.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Let's talk about that a little bit. Discipline and habits. There are people that are highly conscientious people. It's a personality trait. If you score very highly in conscientiousness, it means that it's easier for you to have some form of good habits and you take things more seriously and so on. If you score very low in conscientiousness, you will struggle in a capitalist society that needs structure and so on. And this book becomes even more important for you because discipline, the willpower, is not that powerful. The real discipline is creating a system for you to do it. And discipline will beat motivation anytime. And there is a new, one of the books that we're going to read, I hope, Miriam, I've added this to the list, maybe you can confirm, is the book about total ownership by Jocko Willink.
Extreme Ownership?
Extreme Ownership, yeah. Do we have that?
August 17th.
That's going to be amazing. That's one of my favorite books because it's from the army and people die and there is fighting. I'm a boy. I like fighting. So that book talks about how to do it properly. And it talks about discipline. Discipline eats motivation for breakfast. And our society believes that, if you're not achieving something, it's just because you're not passionate enough, you're not motivated enough. And that's a lie. It's just that you don't have the discipline to put the systems in place for you to do that. And if you have the personality who is highly disorganized and you're not really good at structure, you're going to find yourself as an artist not achieving anything because an artist needs a canvas. An artist needs limits and boundaries. When you mature in your artistry, you will always ask, what are my limits and boundaries? Because you cannot be creative without limits and boundaries. And these habits protect that. Another time we're going to talk about the relationship between creativity and limitation. And we're going to do a fantastic exercise here, and it will help us understand that. Let's open for questions. Alicia Lawrence, go for it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Sam, I just wanted to make a comment based on the book. Two things. The book brought out the fact that we should focus on what we want to become and not so much what we want to achieve.
Yes.
And I think as Christians, that is very, very important to us. It is not about just doing things, but rather becoming the person that God would want us to be. Having this meaningful relationship with Jesus is going to put things in place for all the other stuff that we want to do. Right? That, yes. And the fact that sometimes like when I talk to the young people in my church, I teach the children, the younger ones, the teenagers. And sometimes they will say, I want to improve on my prayer life and I want to do that. But James Clear made it very clear that a habit, you cannot improve on a habit that doesn't exist.
Good point. So
that if you are saying that you want to increase or improve your prayer life, but you're not praying, how can you improve on something that is not established? So yes. The whole, and I think that was mind blowing when I read that. You cannot improve on a habit that does not exist. It must be there. It must be there.
That's very insightful. Here is a very famous biblical passage that says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Pretty much the impossible list, right? And here the metaphor that Paul uses is fruit. Okay, fruit. The fruit of the Spirit is. And we take for granted that in order to have a fruit, we need a tree. And in order to have a tree, we needed a seed. And there is an entire process there that the Holy Spirit takes us through before we are joyful. And it's a series of steps. If you think of a seed, it has to die in order to grow. And once it dies, it starts to grow. And then every day there is photosynthesis. There are 1,000 little steps every day that need to happen before you come to the fruit. The fruit is the miracle on a tree, and it's even more so when you talk about love, joy, peace. And you see this in the disciples' lives. So, you know, you have John. John is and his brother James, called the son of thunder. And John, I'm going to show you John, the hero's version of John, because it really helps to put context into this. Let me see if I can find it here. Character artwork, and John is here. Okay, this here is John. Okay, you don't want to mess with John, right? John is feisty, and he's the son of thunder. And John is the kind of guy that when the Samaritans rejected Jesus, his idea of the next steps is he came to Jesus and said, I have an idea, please. Yes, John? We need to call fire down from heaven and destroy them. Jesus doesn't say anything. What do you do with John? You know, he is feisty, he's fiery. And then the Holy Spirit comes. And that's, you know, year 34 or so. And John takes a while. But by the end of his life, he writes in his book, you know, 1 John, 2 John, he writes, "Dearly beloved children, love one another." That's the journey. It takes years, and it takes small acts of love constantly in order for you to experience love. So you cannot have the habit of loving if you don't do it every single day. The habit of patience. And if you want to experience patience, if you want to have the fruit, God will expose you to situations where you need to be patient. And it's hard. Of course it's hard. It's difficult. And a tree needs to constantly struggle with itself as it grows before there is a fruit. So thank you for that, Alicia, that spiritual element there. Okay, who else? If you want to speak, there is a little hand just below the participants. It's somewhere there. I don't know where. But a little hand that you say, I want to speak. There are many good comments here. Why don't you come and mention it? Eric Lowe, let me ask you to talk about the Goldilocks principle. Eric. Go for it. If you have video and you can turn it on, that will be better. Otherwise, it's fine.
It's not showing.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay, so anyway, the Goldilocks rule that jumped out at me was something that was new, because many times you get a habit. For example, you go to the gym, they mention this in the book, but it's something I'd experienced as well. You go to the gym, you do the same exercises, and even if you vary it a little bit, eventually it gets a little bit boring. And so the whole idea is that you want to make your task fit right on the edge of your current ability. I think it was a percentage, maybe around 4% or something above what you're capable of, just to keep yourself at the point of being challenged. Because it's like if you're playing, you know, a sport, say tennis with someone, if they're so much better than you that you always lose, you're not going to want to play with them. And if they're so easy, you're not going to want to play with them either. You really want someone that, you know, you stand a chance of beating, but is somewhere around or just above your experience level. So yeah, that's just the idea. And the way that you would apply that, according to the book, is in part to reevaluate some of your existing habits, areas of your life that are maybe getting a bit stale, and say, hey, how can I bring some more challenge into this and take it to the next level, more refinement and more complexity. Excellent.
Yeah, Alyssa, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, I actually did this recently, and Sam was actually the one who kind of helped walk me through this. I knew a lot about Facebook. I knew a lot about different social media platforms, but one thing I really wanted to learn and understand was SEO. And I knew it was kind of pushing me a little bit past where I maybe felt comfortable. But so Sam was in the middle of doing the SEO for the Unlocking Valid Prophecy. He was creating the titles and like really working all this. And I said, can I just sit in with you and watch? And I'm going to tell you that I don't even remember how long it was, an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. Okay. That agony of
2
going
hours.
through that process. It was more than a 3% though for me in the end. Like where I went from that, where how I grew. But the thing is, we have to constantly be willing to push ourselves just a little bit further. I can't just be content. I'm good at Facebook. Fabulous. I need to learn the next thing. I've got to figure out what's the next thing I can do. So I'm constantly improving myself. And I wasn't saying like, I want to become a rock star, like the most incredible thing out there. I was like, okay, what's the most natural next thing? What's the next best fit? And it happened to be SAM and SEO. And so I think the Goldilocks rule is something that's really important for us to really put into our lives. I love that, Eric, what you said.
What happened the very next day, Alyssa?
So the very next day, no joke. So I was doing this just so I could kind of learn how to do this. And the next day, Sam ended up having to be in meetings all day. And so I kind of was starting to feel panicked because I knew that the time was coming closer. So I was like, so would you like me to just kind of go in the back and just like do my best? And like, you can just come in and like fix it all, but so there's something there. And so everything that I had just watched, not thinking I would implement anytime soon, I ended up implementing the very next day, which actually I'm going to say is very important. Don't like learn something and then don't implement it right away. You have to be practicing those skills and those habits right away. So I don't know if Sam lied about, no, I'm just joking. No, I know he was in a meeting, but it automatically started helping. And then the next day he was still in a lot of the same meetings. So I started kind of just helping him get it kind of all put together. And it helped me grow so much because I was instantaneously starting to use those skills.
I could have gotten out of those meetings. That's the truth. But
Okay.
I needed to see what you were made of. And you ranked in the top 3 within 24 hours for the first SEO exercise you did on YouTube. So that's when you find something that you're already talented in and you push forward. Now, here is a very important principle. There is a order and there is chaos. If you find yourself in too much order, in the terrain that you already know, okay, that's the known universe, that's the known territory, and you're very good at it, and that's all you do, then it will become stale and boring, and you're gonna die. Okay, that's it. Your career is gonna die, spirituality is gonna die. Wherever you just live in the order, you're going to die. Then there is chaos. And if you only live in chaos, in the unknown, doing things that you don't know how to do, being exposed to situations you're not sure of. Yes, it's exhilarating and some people are addicted to it, but you have no structure and you're going to die. So if you live in just chaos, it's terrible. And if you live in just order, it's terrible. And it's terrible for everyone around you. And you know this instinctively when you visit some friends. There are some friends that you visit that are so orderly. It's like they bring you a drink, and before the cup is allowed to hit the center table, there is a coaster that comes in, and the house is spotless, and everything is in its place, and you immediately feel uncomfortable. Why? Because it's too much order. Too much order is not good. You need to have some chaos. What does that mean? It means that you need to have some serendipity. You need to have some surprise. You need to have something that happens which is chaotic or could lead to chaos. Now, you also have some friends and that you try to avoid their house. Why? You also try to avoid their house because it's total chaos. And when you arrive, there are things everywhere. Nothing is in order. I'm not talking about the odd clothes left everywhere. I'm talking about total chaos. Like laundry isn't done. Not that it's not done properly. It's just not done. And you die. In either of those settings, you don't want to live there. Now, when it comes to your career, your talents, your abilities, you want to live at the edge of order and chaos. And the best example I have for this, and this is covered fantastically by a guy called Jordan Peterson, which I suggest you read too. And he puts it this way. Imagine you have a gymnast and she's doing the free, how do you call it? The free
Beam. Sorry.
No, the mat. There's just a mat, and she does all
I
of the
just call it the floor routine.
the floor routine. Okay, so that's what you're watching. You're watching a floor routine, and she is just perfect. She does everything perfectly. She does not fail. She attempts to do a 3-spin thing, she does it. She attempts to do this, she does it. And she gets a 9.5 because it's just flawless. But then the next gymnast steps in, and you can see that she's pushing herself to the absolute limit. You can see that she also achieves everything she sets out to achieve, but it's edgy. You can see she's stretching herself further than she should. And at any moment it could fail, but it doesn't. And she delivers on everything, also flawlessly, but daringly. She gets a 10. Why? Because we respond with our bodies when we see somebody at the edge of order and chaos. It doesn't matter what level they are. And here's the interesting thing. If you see a child at church, you know, in England, we have different grades for musicians. And when you just start, you're grade 1, and then grade 2, 3, 4, up until 8. And let's say you have a grade 2 guitarist. Okay, so this is a 12, 13-year-old who is a grade 2 guitarist. And you have the following week a grade 8 guitarist. Okay. Now, this boy is grade 2, but he takes the piece that he's playing is for his level, but he rehearses that thing. He plays it again and again and again and again, and he pushes himself. You can tell he is in it. He is in between order and chaos. He's taken everything he knows to the edge, and he's trying to do even better than what his capacity is. And you are instinctively on edge. You are looking at this boy play, and you respond. And at the end, if your church claps, you clap wholeheartedly. And if your church just says amen, you say amen. And if your church doesn't say anything and everybody appears to be dead, inside you're happy, right? You respond somehow to this. Now, let's say the following week you have a grade 8 player, and he takes his piece and he does it orderly, perfectly, plays no problem. You don't respond in the same way. The grade 2 did more for you than the grade 8. Why? Because of their ability? No, but because they were living at the edge of order and chaos. So when I am going to speak, I have a rule that it doesn't matter if I am speaking to 3 people or 13,000, which is the maximum number of people I've spoken to. I will speak at the edge of order and chaos. I'm going to take it as far as I possibly can with what I know, and I'm going to try to go a little bit further, almost not making it, but trying. And this creates it doesn't matter where the situation is, it creates that edge of your seat experience immediately. So you never want to be totally ordered. You never want to master your craft to the point that it's effortless. Even when it is, you want to make it effortful so that you can live at that edge of order and chaos. But as Eric pointed out, if you go too far, then you fall and you fail. So don't go too far. You know, it's the 4% or whatever percentage it is. Go a little bit further than your ability and you'll get better at it. Okay, who else wants to say something? I see people in the chat. Let me know if you want to mention or comment at the top. Maybe a quote from the book that was interesting to you. Maybe a concept from the book that was interesting to you.
You know, we're waiting for another great quote from that book is there are no good habits or bad habits. There are only effective habits that is effective at solving problems. And so either you have an effective habit or you have an ineffective habit. And I liked that concept because I always, I got all these bad habits. You know, it's like, actually, I'm just really ineffective at, you know, different things. I'm ineffective at creating good habits to overcome those. And
nice.
I'm working on effective habits right now.
Go, Raf. Go for it.
Yes, hi. The author talks about identity, and he says that instead of changing actions or behaviors or habits, those are the results of the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. So the best method would be to change our identity in our minds, and then habits would be a natural outcome of what we believe about who we are. And that ties in with scripture, as Jesus said, you must be born again. So once we see ourselves as sons and daughters of God, it's natural to behave according to that. So that's a powerful concept.
Absolutely. Here is another Bible verse that speaks to that. Here. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, Romans 12, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. It is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So there is a renewal of your mind, which is, to the Bible, extremely important as you develop into the kind of person that God has always seen you to be, because you are taking on an identity, and you can choose whether you are going to be just someone else, the result of an evolutionary process, or a child of God, and that will define everything about you. So it's an important decision that you make. Karen, please.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
So there was several things that I think I liked about the book, and the first of one of is because it spoke to me about the principle of change. I think one of the things that I love about God is that he always sees what we can get, like he has a vision of what we can become, and that means that change is always there's room for change, and sometimes we just need to be aware. It's one of the things that that book said about, like, you have to be aware of it in order to make it to say, okay, I want to change. And then one of the things that I really like about the book, and I think it speaks about what we were talking about last week, is that when you find your identity, you see yourself, what I want to be. Let's say if I'm a child of God, right? That's our first identity. And then after that, God is guiding you through this. I see you as this person, or so, or this person. Then it takes you to get to this system that he is saying, because basically what he is talking through all the book, it's all a system. It's how you're gonna make it happen. But it's not gonna be sustainable if the core of your ideas are not the proper ones, if your self-talk is not the right one, if the way that you are seeing change is not or why you want to have the result. Let's say if we want to change because we want to be famous, or I don't know, gain more likes in I don't know, whatever is the goal, if that's the result, is not in tune with what is your identity or what you want to achieve as a person, then it's not going to be sustainable. The change is not going to happen, or it's going to happen, but it's not going to be there. But the book was talking about something that the Bible says. When you have a very strong identity of who you are and who you're going to become, or what God wants you to become, then that's when change starts happening. And then that's when it talks about in Matthew, right? Matthew 25:23 is like, well done, good, faithful friend. If you're faithful in the small things, I'll reward you in the big things. So then it's like small steps, really small steps that like focus on the now. They say that sometimes when you want to you don't want to get anxious about something that is really big. You have to focus on the present, on the minute, on what's happening, be aware of what is around you. And I think this is perfect example of how we can make a change. Just focus on the day, on the minute, and then sustain it throughout the day. And then that is, like you were saying, it's going to be a compound change, that you're going to be growing until one moment is going to be so normal to you that I think the one thing that like we were talking last week is that sometimes you need to be very focused on the one thing that you want to change, because if you want to change 100 things at the same time, the only thing that you're going to get is a lot of frustration. But if you focus on one change, then maybe that is going to impact. Let's say if I want to have more attention or more, I don't know, have more retention in all the things that we're reading or so, then that needs to be with health. So then focus on health, and then that is going to help you build in other aspects of your life. And I think that's very, I've been going through a journey, because I think it's a journey that is never ending. It's always kind of improving or adapting. But the principle of being, let's say, if like a mission statement for yourself, you put yourself and you say, I want to be this person who wants to be healthy, who wants to be, I don't know, grow professionally and all these things. I want to be closer to God. And then you create a system after that. And then it's going to help you, because then when you fall, you remind yourself about that mission statement. Hey, but I said that I want to become this, or I want to be this. And that helps you to kind of keep the motivation going, because it's going to guide you. It's going to, if you're moving to the right, then it's going to take you again to the one thing that you want to achieve. Right. Probably. And that's it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. That's exactly right. The book also talks about, in that small things, is that every time you're doing something, you vote for the kind of person that you want to become. It's like a little vote that you add. And that was an interesting concept too. Yes,
agree. It's like the positive self-talk. Sometimes we tend to drive our thoughts. And I think that's where we see the conflict. We're in between a conflict, right? The good and evil, Satan and God. God is believing in us, and he's saying, hey, I have something good for you. And Satan is like, no, but you can, you're a sinner, you're this. And I think the self-talk reflects all that battle between what it's good for us and between what Satan wants us to kind of be away from. So it's that self-talk that I think is so important for us to sometimes tackle. And so it's so it's so inside ourselves, in our minds, that's when God can definitely make a change.
Yes.
Like definitely change the core, because if we don't change the core, then we cannot sustain the change for ourselves. But if God changes the core, then he can change. I remember that I study organizational psychology. That's my career. And but I study in a non-Adventist school. And one of the classes, it was psychopathology. And the teacher was, every time that I would say, for example, and that was not good, because of course I grew up Adventist, and that is something that I had very clear, good and bad. This is good, this is bad. And she will say, you know what, you cannot change. And one of the things that we were learning about, it was Freud, all the Freud theory. And one of the things that they were saying is that sometimes, and she kind of made me write it down in a way, like if a person eats like a chair, and sometimes some people they don't have a leg. And when there's an event that kind of makes them fall, they cannot change. And I was like, no, that's not true, because then God is the opposite of that. When somebody falls, when something is not good, then he can restore it. And I think that's a basic principle to motivate us, that no matter what, it seems to be impossible, like God said in the Bible, everything is possible with God.
Yes. Thank you. Emenike, go for it.
What I like about the book, like this morning, I've always been doing exercise. Exercise is something that I enjoy so much ever since I have been a youth in my teenage years. I've maintained the same waistline, and my body weight has almost been constant forever. And people wonder, I said, every time you look the same, I just smile. In my mind, I say, if you do the same thing, you remain the same. But this morning, because I reviewed the book, one of the things I like is more about the frequency, not necessarily the duration. It's better if you want to be doing something, you do it. If it's every day, you do it every day than doing one thing for such a long time that the next day you couldn't do anything. So this most times, Monday morning is the most difficult time for me. After I do exercise 5 times a week, skip on Saturday and Sunday. So the Monday morning is always difficult. It's like trying to start something you've not done for a while. So this morning, I didn't want to do exercise. I remember what I read in the book. It said, if you must skip, don't skip more than 2 days. I said, okay, I've already skipped 2 days. I need to start. I just move on immediately and started. So I think that's something I like so much, which like the book I read sometime, whenever you eat outside the zone, don't stay there, just go back to the zone. If you're somebody that likes eating good food and you find out yourself eating junk, don't eat junk more than twice. If you've eaten it once, go back to eat the right food. Thank you.
Absolutely. There's another book, and I don't remember which, that talks about the day after perfect. And this is really important because a lot of people can manage to get a streak for like 4 months, and then they fail one day, and that's the end of it. They can't bring themselves back. The day after perfect is really important. So, all right, let me go back here. Brilliant. We have come to the end of this episode of Sam's Book Club. But of course, Karen just put her hand up. So I'm going to honor Karen Glassford because I really like her. So Karen, you have the last word tonight.
No, Eric had posted a quote that is so true. It says, the amount of time you have been performing a habit is not as important as the number of times you have performed it. You know, I have known kids, I used to teach music lessons, and I had kids that were so motivated to practice that they would practice for 2 hours straight. And I would say, no. It is better that you practice 1/2 hour in the morning and 1/2 hour in the evening than that you practice 2 hours straight, because as you do the same thing over and over with a little bit of time in between so that it sinks into your memory or whatever, you will actually get better by doing it more frequently than necessarily longer.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And that was it. We talked about atomic habits today, and next week we will be talking about 1 million followers. How do you get 1 million followers? This is a phenomenal book about digital marketing in the best possible setting you could have, which is a mindset of growth. How can you go from a few followers to 1 million followers? And I cannot wait to discuss this book. Alyssa will be back because we've had multiple discussions about the book already. We'll have incredible conversations, and you will learn great things about how to grow your social media and that of your ministry. And that is it. Let's have a word of prayer to end tonight, and I will see you next week. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you for bringing us together to talk about our habits. Lord, there is a profound truth in what we do as it reflects who you see in us. You have an identity for us, and we pray that we may have the courage to do everything we need to every day to reflect that identity and your view of us. We pray this in your name. Amen. All right, everyone. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.